Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ignite's November board meeting. If everybody will stand and Commissioner Chapkus lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First, we need to make a motion to remove item 6 from the agenda, Midtown Ventures LLC Midtown Project, as we're not ready to speak of that project yet.
I'll second.
I'll make that motion to strike that.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We'll now open it up for public comment. Seeing nobody in the audience, we will, I'll entertain a motion to approve the October board meeting minutes and November special call meeting minutes.
I'll
So
make that-
moved.
Oh, go ahead. Brennan?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the October 16th board meeting and the November 13th special call meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next is the committee reports. Commissioner Arman.
Well, we're moving right along, and we're going to have a relatively short committee report, too. First of all, looking at the financial statements on the Lake District, the balance sheet, the Lake District experienced a $35,154 decrease in cash assets from September month end. Receivables due from Atlas District, $755. It's a new line item reflecting the Atlas District share of G&A costs. The other assets, Lake District 2016 Series Note Reserve Account had an increase of $106 for the month of October. Under the liabilities and fund balance bonds, no change. On all other liability parameters are either unchanged or normal for the month, including the 2% credit to the due to arts line item due to the county increment check received in October. Looking at the P&L from the Lake District received $2,469 in tax increment revenue from the county in October. Professional fees includes $19,866 final payment to HDR for the Health Corridor Master Planning effort, and all other P&L expenditure line items are either in line with normal operating month. Moving on down to the River District and the balance sheet. On the asset side, the River District experienced a $7,850 decrease in cash assets from the September month end. All liability parameters either are unchanged or normal for the month, including the 2% credit to the due to arts line item due to the October county increment check. On the P&L for the River District received $1,846 in tax increment revenue from the county in October. Agency-funded initiatives, the Stimson Millsite Atlas project, $0 for Welsh Comer, and all of their P&L expenditure line items are in line with normal operating month. The balance sheet for the Atlas District, this is the second month we've had this. The Atlas District for assets experienced a $124 decrease in cash assets from September month end. And the liabilities and fund balance due to the River District, $200 of repayment of funds for the opening of the checking account, and due to Lake District, $755 G&A costs. And the P&L, all P&L expenditure line items are normal for the month. So that is the financial report for the three districts.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the financials?
Well, why don't we move on and do payables first, then we'll come back to
Oh, I'm sorry.
the financials. Payables this month are relatively small. Start off with Elam and Burke, a total of $3,474.35. There was $60 for general legal counsel on legislative issues, and $3,414.35 for the Health Corridor Initiative. Secondly, we had $9,271.36 for the to Holly Troxel, broken out $1,836 for general legal counsel, $6,265.36 for the Health Corridor Initiative, and $1,170 for the Atlas Initiative. Moving down for the third payable, Atlas Mills Site Initiative, total of $114,351.72, broken out $36,600 to Welsh Comer, the Welsh Comer team, amendment number 5 for regulatory and public space planning. The second one was for $69,251.72, Welshcomer, once again, amendment number 6, regulatory and public space planning. And then the last one was $8,500, Welshcomer team amendment number 7, waterfront construction services. Total payables was $127,097.43, and that is the payables for the month.
All right, now we will have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Lake, River, and Atlas financial statements for October 2019 and the payables for October, November 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Jordan, do you have a parking report?
I have a short parking report. The Parking Commission meeting was canceled last month, and I understand there were 3 bidders to handle the parking enforcement for Coeur d'Alene, and we're waiting to hear back on the bids. That's my short report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right into the executive director's report.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'd like to invite Phil Boyd to come up and give us a project update on the Atlas Mills Site Initiative.
Thank you. In the spirit of the meeting tonight will be a short update. So there's just 3 things I was going to cover for the board. The waterfront park project schedule, that's obviously been awarded and we're starting work on that. Give you a little update on the phase 1 request for a proposal and then the phase 1 design for that portion of the development. Just a reminder to everybody, the park project consists of the area down in here. So that's the only part that we're currently under construction to do work on. If you happen to drive by on Celtice and look out here, you'll see that there is some work going on up in this area. And there's 2 things happening there. One, the city is processing their leaves from Leaf Fest in this area right here. And then the second thing that's happening is over in this area, La Riviere is out there. They've got their screen out there and they're test processing some of the soils up in this area, the stockpile soils, to determine if we have an opportunity to use that material on site. It's such a variable nature that you can't really easily quantify how usable that material is without doing just what La Riviere is doing. They actually proposed it and said, hey, would you guys be interested, the city, Ignite, be interested and allow us to go in there and process some of that material. If it's usable, we can look at decreasing the cost because we wouldn't have to import it from off-site. So it's a really good, potentially a good thing. It appears initially that at a minimum we'll get topsoil out of that we can use on site, which would be a big savings, and then potentially also some aggregate material. Schedule-wise, this is obviously a really summarized schedule from what La Riviere presented to us, but generally the work that you'll see or not see happening unless you go down onto the site is the shoreline stabilization and the mass earthwork, which are down in this area, obviously down in here. They'll also start on the buildings as soon as we get a building permit for it. Also start on the water accesses, and then some curb and sidewalk, if you can believe it, they'll do this time of year. Landscaping and paving will wait till later in the year, and the utilities will as well. Moving on to the RFP, we had a big push last week to get the RFP out. This is off of your website. In the RFP tab, if you go in there and click on it, it not only has the RFP document that Heartland prepared, but down here, we've compiled a bunch of due diligence documents that talk about the soil conditions. We'll have an FAQ on there. So just anything that a developer might be interested in evaluating to give them a better understanding. Heartland, as soon as it hit the street, so to speak, it was in the newspaper, Heartland reached out to the 6 or 7 developers that had expressed a lot of interest and said, hey, remind, it's out on the street, and also did an email blast to kind of everybody that has contacted them. All those developers, the 6 kind of big ones that expressed a lot of interest said, great, we'll get back to you, and they're in the process of scheduling meetings with them, video chat meetings, where we'll be able to show them the details of this information, really bring them up to speed on it and accelerate their learning, so to speak. Heartland also mentioned that they got two kind of out of the blue calls that were really, they said, interesting. They didn't go into a lot of details, but one of them had to do with the West Side commercial, that there was somebody that was really interested and had potential tenants on the West Side commercial, which is a little bit surprising because the rooftops aren't in yet. But they were excited about that. And then the other one, they didn't really elaborate with me. Heartland, as we talked before, keeps kind of an arm's length relationship even with me, and brings me in on kind of a need-to-know basis when they have questions about utilities and infrastructure and things like that. So that's kind of the status of the RFP. And then on the Phase 1 design, the areas that we're working on developing the infrastructure improvements to be able to take it to a final plat so you can actually sell these parcels is this area. And I don't know that it was completely apparent to everybody, but it also includes what's called Area 6 over here, right off of Suzanne. So the parcels that are actually up for sale include that parcel and the parcels over in this area. So, and I think as the board is aware, you know, it can be any kind of combination that we'll see from the proposers on that. So that is my short presentation, and glad to answer any questions.
Madam Chair, Phil, can you just elaborate on, back to that previous slide, that the door is still left open for a potential developer to make an overture for the entire site, all phases?
Yep, that's, thanks, Tony. In the RFP, back in this document, when you click into it and start reading it, it talks about how you might be able, if you're interested, you could purchase just a block, or you can come in and make a proposal on the entire site. So that's also, that is continue to be out there. We haven't, I'm not aware that we've received a lot of interest in that, but then again, I don't know all the details at the communications Heartland's happening.
That's really good, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, was there any further discussion about the triangle piece up on top there, or is that just dead now?
The last thing we heard from the city is that there has not been any official movement out of Lance Douglas, the property owner there. We're starting to move this infrastructure that's associated with this project. Remember the city's corridor, the railroad corridor that extends all the way to Mill River, or to Grand Mill Boulevard? This project is going to require us putting a sewer line in that. Under the original proposal from Lance Douglas with the development of a River's Edge, the sewer line would go in the public space on the waterfront. So he would be able to, and there was a land swap. Pretty quickly here, depending on how fast this moves along, potentially in the first to second quarter of 2020, that work may be under construction. Mm-hmm. And so some of the flexibility that exists on his site may go away. And I think the city administrator has been communicating that to Mr. Douglas, so he's aware of what Ignite's doing, and kind of, you know, you guys got your foot on the gas pretty good here. Mm-hmm. And so that's the last we've heard.
Okay, thank you.
And is that little section to the east in play now because the entry road comes in, or?
It is, yep. Suzanne is going to be constructed through here, and so it just seemed natural to put that in play. You know, you kind of get into this mode of where do you stop, because you kind of look at this and say, well, why not put this in play as well? And really what that boils down to is how much funding Ignite has to put in capital improvements. And remember, when we go back a year and a half or so, we did the financial feasibility model, and you have a certain amount of capital that can be invested, and then you wait to sell lots, and then you take the capital for the lot sales and plow it into the next phase. And that's essentially what we've gone as far as your budget will permit in these areas. And that one was kind of low-hanging fruit. But in here, if we were to try to get these parcels serviced and these parcels in here, quite a bit of infrastructure that has to go in.
Phil, one other question on part 3 up there, the old Mount Hink. Is that now kind of the final plot of what you could do for housing with the test holes that you've put in? Or is that still in play a little bit?
I'm going to flip back to this picture here. It's a little easier to look at. This is, based on what we know now, this is what is likely financially feasible. with Le Riviere's efforts, there's the potential that this could change. In kind of the short story there, Le Riviere probably sees a opportunity for both themselves and for Ignite. The opportunity for Ignite would be is if Le Riviere comes in and says, gosh, I can process this material and move it around the site very economically, we may be able to go in and remediate what we call phase 4. This is the obvious reason we call it phase 4. The unsuitable soils there go down about a negative 20 feet from, we call it the Celtice elevation. If we can go in and really economically remediate that site, it may bring it to phase 1A. And so the other thing that may happen is as we start to dig into this area and we generate structural material from that screening I was telling you about, now we're not paying to import structural material from off the site if we can build it on site. So now that changes the economics of it. This gets to be a fairly complicated analysis because when you look at a pile of dirt, how much of that soil can turn into structural material and how much of it is unusable. You don't know that until you process it. And then if you were to bring that to a board and say, we sort of kind of think we might want to like you to consider this financial thing, it becomes really a risky proposition. If you have a contractor who comes in, who's been out there moving soils around and becoming familiar with it and absorbs some of that risk themselves, that might be something worth the board considering because it brings phase 4 online and potentially makes the developable area of phase 3 bigger. So I know that's a long-winded answer to you, to your question, but part of what I was doing is laying a little bit of the groundwork. As soon as next meeting, we may be bringing forward to the board for their consideration just an idea, not that you might necessarily act on it, but potentially if you can bring something online sooner and make it sellable sooner, I think that's a positive thing for everybody.
So right now, Le Riviere's bid is only for the waterfront renovation in the Lake District.
Correct. And
So
technically,
obviously, he's looking at some potential down-the-road opportunities that he may or may not have access to, depending on how it gets bid out.
exactly. And just to be, because I got admonished by the city attorney about this, that it's technically was a negotiation with Le Riviere on the park project here. They, that ultimately ended up in a negotiated deal. The very easiest way to think about this is just the park project is importing materials from off-site, right? They're coming from out on the prairie. Le Riviere, originally we said to them, they had offered up, hey, if we can process topsoil on-site, would the city consider using that on-site topsoil? And yes, if there's a cost savings to it. So they brought in their screen to process topsoil. Well, as a byproduct of that, off comes riprap, off comes stream bed cobbles, off come other things that we can use on site. So we're out there looking at this all a little bit surprised that there's that type of material out there. So we said, well, rather than just considering topsoil, let's consider all the different aggregates that might come into the park project. And so that's kind of where we stopped. And then as I was thinking about this some more, and I talked to Tony about it, and I said, gosh, we might have an opportunity to make this a little bit bigger situation, generate much greater cost savings to remediate this site and bring the parcels online sooner, all while keeping the public entities' risks low, because it's a real challenging thing for the board. Plus you have your budget years that you only have a certain amount of money budgeted this year. So when we come forward to the board next month, we anticipate there'll probably be, a really simple thing to consider. Hey, here, if we process these soils on site and use them down in the park, there'd be X number of tens of thousands of dollars of saving to the park project. Probably a pretty easy decision. There might be some other discussions about we could also remediate these other areas, which become a little bit more complicated because, one, you may not have budgeted money. There's just other factors with them. But we intend to bring that forward. And that was my discussion with Tony. Should we even really consider this? And of course, Tony says if it's cost savings and it's a creative idea that will in the long run benefit the public, absolutely take some time and figure it out. And Le Riviere was willing to do some of the groundwork at their own at their own expense. Again, that might have been longer, sorry, Madam Chairwoman, that might have been longer explanation than you asked for, but it's kind of just an indication of what's to come.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions for Phil?
Just a comment on that, just to give credit to Phil and Tommy LaRiviere. I mean, he's very entrepreneurial. He thinks outside the box, and he's looking to do things wisely out there and just not follow the contract and do X, Y, and Z and charging for this. I mean, he wants to do a good project, and if he sees cost savings, he brings it forward and says, hey, if you guys think about it this way, you could save, tens of thousands of dollars. And I think that's very proactive on his part. So I just want
Sounds
to
like a
give him
good
some credit.
partner.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be a gravel pit out there, so.
Yeah, we're a little bit surprised, because as you guys know, we did a bunch of test holes out there, but when you look at the test holes, the thing that's really a challenge, the classifications of the soils, you'll get a classification that says moist brown soils with gravel and cobble and wood product. And it's a small sample that you pulled out of the hillside that you're trying to understand, and it's really difficult for me to come forward to the board and ask you to make any decisions based on this really thimbleful of information. Well, LaRiviere is out there with an enormous 950 loader, and he drives into it and pulls out 15 yards out of the hillside, exposes the whole thing, and I'm standing there looking at it thinking, this is great. And our wheels start turning about what we can do with it. Well, now, and then when you put it through a screen and you can actually see what's produced off of it, now I feel more comfortable talking to Tony about it, showing him some of the numbers. Tony looks at it and says, gosh, let's move this forward, and something we can bring forward to that we would feel comfortable making recommendations to the board, explaining the white lines and all the other things that are associated with it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other initiative updates?
Just a few, Madam Vice Chair. Midtown Ventures project, even though we didn't talk about it today, the project work continues. The issue still is working through the parking easement issue that is controlled by the Capones. So we hope to bring that forward for further board discussion in December. Memorial Grandstand renovation, the project continues to go on. If you see it out there, they're making progress. A dry well for the dugout is being installed this week, and roof work continues. It's still estimated to be completed in spring of 2020. And finally, the Museum of North Idaho Young Avenue relocation effort. As you probably are all aware, the White House was moved this past Saturday and is on, well, last time I saw it is above the foundation. I'm not sure if they lowered it yet. They might be hooking up all the plumbing and stuff, but it's on site. And so I guess everything went smoothly. I didn't hear of any major issues, so that move has been completed. That's all I have.
Thank you. Now it's time for any board commissioner comments.
Well, I would just add, as far as on the parking report, that, and my understanding is we have 3 kind of qualified bids that came in for that parking management, and there's going to be a team that looks at that. I'm not sure who beyond the city, but I was asked if I would be on the team that would review, and then they've got a grading scale. So I will be part of that. So.
Thank you.
Perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
And they're going to do that, I think, next week. So it's moving right along. So.
Good.
We had a fruitful conversation yesterday at the council meeting, and thank you to Tony and Commissioner English for all of their, and Danielle, responding to all of the Q&A. There were some really great questions by council, I think, and you guys did a great job of navigating through those, so thank you.
Well, I think our last discussion brought up to me that, there was a lot of discussion that centered on, okay, you've got to, have a plan, but some want to have that really detailed down and written in stone, and nothing is that absolutely sure, just like with this, and saying, wow, they got partway into it, and we may change some, lot layout, road layout, economic things may change. So, again, you can have it as much as you can, but there's no way realistically, or that you'd want to, in my mind, to have it so tied down when circumstance change. So, yeah, it'll, as it goes along, it has to be kind of a living, flexible document, but, but still with keeping to the same vision. So, And I think it all went, when all was said and done, was approved by the council to keep going for the next step, and no huge negative wave, against the project at this point, to at least look at the next step, so.
So we're still on for December 4th for final approval?
December 3rd.
December 3rd.
Any other board commissioner comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. That was a short meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Good job.